The man hit the mat before anyone in the room understood what had happened. Not because Bruce Lee was cruel, not because he was reckless, but because when the body moves faster than the human eye can track, the mind is always the last thing to catch up. 340 pounds of professional strength athlete, the kind of man who bent steel bars for weekend entertainment, lay flat on the gymnasium floor, staring at the ceiling, completely still. 11 seconds. That was all it took. The crowd didn't cheer. Not immediately. First came the silence. The breathless, disbelieving silence of people who had just watched something they would spend the rest of their lives trying to explain to others who weren't there. Los Angeles, California, March 1971, 7:45 in the evening. The gymnasium at the private athletic club on the west side of the city smelled of chalk dust and leather. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting pale yellow light across rows of padded benches where 42 men sat shoulder to shoulder, many of them athletes themselves, powerlifters, wrestlers, and former college football players who had drifted into the world of strength sports after their playing days ended. This was not a public event. No cameras, no press, no admission tickets. The gathering had been arranged quietly, the way serious men arrange serious things, through telephone calls and handshakes and the unspoken understanding that what happened inside these walls would stay here. At the center of the room, a man named Gerald Conroy was warming up. He was not warming up in any ordinary sense of the word. Conroy picked up a 50-kilogram dumbbell with one hand and pressed it overhead, slowly, 6 times, the way a man might lift a coffee cup. He set it down without sound, rolled his neck until it cracked loudly twice, and bounced lightly on the balls of his feet. A surprisingly nimble movement for a body that size. Gerald Conroy, 6 feet 4 inches, 340 pounds. Not the inflated, waterlogged mass of a bodybuilder, genuine functional power, the dense, cable-thick musculature of a man who had been lifting since the age of 14. He had competed nationally in Olympic weightlifting and, more recently, in the emerging circuit of international strength showcases that moved through American cities like traveling exhibitions. His grip strength had been measured at over 230 pounds of crushing force per hand. He had once been photographed tearing a phone book, a full one, not a split, in half lengthwise on a bed. He had never, in any competitive or informal physical confrontation, lost. Not once. Not even close. He had also studied combat. 12 years of judo, trained under a former Japanese national champion. Conroy had thrown men weighing over 260 pounds as if they were made of paper. His grip, combined with his understanding of leverage, made him, in the estimation of the strength community, genuinely dangerous in a way that went beyond simple size. He looked across the gymnasium at Bruce Lee and smiled. The smaller man. Bruce Lee stood near the far wall in gray slacks and a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, drinking from a paper cup. He was 5 feet 7 inches tall. He weighed, at most, 140 pounds that evening. Many who knew him said he walked around closer to 135 in the winter months when his training volume dropped slightly. The weight difference between the two men was precisely 202 pounds. Several men in the seated audience were quietly, respectfully, concerned, not because they doubted Bruce Lee's abilities in general. His reputation had already moved well beyond Hong Kong into the martial arts circles of California, built on word-of-mouth accounts from people who had stood in front of him and felt what a strike from his hands actually felt like. They were concerned because Conroy was not an ordinary large man. He was an extraordinary large man, with training. 2 of the men present had separately, in the days before this meeting, approached Bruce's friends and suggested that perhaps this particular matchup was not wise. That there was a difference between defeating untrained opponents and defeating someone with Conroy's combination of raw power, grip, and judo background. Bruce had heard these concerns secondhand. He had said nothing in response. When Conroy finished warming up and turned fully to face Bruce across the room, the audience fell completely quiet. Conroy spread his hands slightly at his sides, a gesture that said, simply, "Whenever you're ready." Bruce set his paper cup on the bench beside him, rolled his left sleeve down to the wrist, then his right. "Whenever you are," he said. The space between them. Conroy crossed the gymnasium with the slow, deliberate patience of a man who was used to having time, who had always had time, because his size meant the outcome was rarely in doubt. He stopped 8 feet from Bruce and settled into a low judo stance, his arms extended forward. His center of gravity dropped, his footwork already beginning the subtle dance of a trained grappler looking for the moment to close distance. He expected Bruce to retreat. Every small man retreated. It was instinct. Bruce did not move. He stood with his weight evenly distributed, his hands at mid-height, his eyes calm and entirely still, not moving with Conroy's body, not tracking his hands, just resting on some point that seemed to be not quite Conroy and not quite the wall behind him. Conroy moved in. The grab came with the full commitment of someone who knew that, once contact was made, it was already over. A two-handed lapel grip, the entry point for an Ippon Suinage, the throw that had worked for him literally hundreds of times in competition, that had sent men far heavier than Bruce Lee into the air and down onto the mat. His hands found nothing. This is the part that witnesses struggled to explain afterward. Conroy's hands did not slip. They did not get blocked. They reached the point where Bruce Lee had been, and Bruce Lee was no longer there. Not by much. Not by a dramatic leap backward or a theatrical sidestep. He had moved offline by perhaps 8 inches. A single diagonal shift of his rear foot that rotated his entire body out of the center line. 8 inches. Conroy's weight was already committed forward. His hands were still closing around air when he felt something at his right wrist. Not a grab, a guide. Precise. 2 fingers and a thumb. It redirected the momentum of his arm. All 340 pounds moving behind that arm. A fraction of a degree to the outside. The fraction became everything. His own body weight pulled him past Bruce's position and slightly forward. For the first time in years, Gerald Conroy felt his balance leave him. 11 seconds. He corrected. Fast, faster than most men his size could correct, because his judo training had taught him to feel a break in balance and recover within a single breath. His right foot stabbed the floor and he pivoted, already beginning to reset, already thinking about the next entry point. Bruce was inside his guard before the pivot finished. What happened in the next 3 seconds was described differently by every one of the 42 men who witnessed it, because none of them fully saw it. The speed was not the theatrical, movie magic speed of a stuntman being filmed at 24 frames per second. It was real speed, the kind that exists as a blur in real time and only assembles itself into a sequence when you close your eyes afterward and try to reconstruct it. There was an elbow that found the interior of Conroy's right arm. There was a forward pressure, not a push. Something more complex than a push. Something that used Conroy's own corrective momentum as a vector. There was a sound, not a strike sound, not flesh against flesh, but the compressed grunt of a man whose center of gravity has just been moved by something outside his control. And then Gerald Conroy was on the floor. Not thrown dramatically, not slammed. He was simply on the floor. Seated, then tilting, then down, with the bewildered stillness of a man who does not know the sequence of events that produced his current position. His right arm was held lightly at the wrist by Bruce's left hand. The grip loose, almost gentle, the grip of a man who is done, and knows it, and has no need to demonstrate further. 11 seconds from first contact to floor. What followed? The gymnasium held its silence for a long moment. Then Bruce released Conroy's wrist and took one step back. He did not extend a hand immediately. He waited. He gave Conroy the space to come back to himself in his own time, in his own way, without the added pressure of someone looming over him. Conroy sat on the floor for several seconds. He was not dazed. He was not in pain. He was doing something far more difficult. He was understanding, processing the sequence, running it back, trying to locate the moment where things had shifted. He could not find it. When he stood, it was with the careful, deliberate movement of a man reassembling his sense of self. He was still enormous. His hands were still capable of bending steel. Nothing physical had changed. He looked at Bruce for a long moment. Then he did something that no one present had ever seen him do in a competitive context. He bowed. Not a shallow, performative nod. A genuine bow. Head down. Held for a full 3 seconds. Bruce returned it. "You did not run," Conroy said. His voice was quiet. Not broken. Simply quiet. in the way that a man's voice becomes quiet when he is speaking something true for the first time. Running is a transaction, Bruce said. You keep your size, and I keep my distance. Neither of us learns anything. Conroy looked at his own hands. What did you do with my arm? I gave it a direction it was already choosing. Your balance did the rest. The lesson the room learned, what the 42 men in that gymnasium understood by the end of the evening, was something that does not translate easily into statistics or weight classes or records. Size is not nothing. Gerald Conroy was genuinely dangerous, and anyone who walked into a room with him carrying only arrogance would leave carrying regret. The 200-pound advantage is real. The grip strength is real. The judo is real. But size has a logic. It moves in predictable ways. It commits to angles. It requires the opponent to be in a specific place at a specific time for the technique to land. And when the opponent is not in that place, when they have moved, not far, not dramatically, but precisely, the size becomes a liability. The mass that was supposed to end the fight continues past its intended target and arrives somewhere unplanned, already off balance, already committed, already unable to stop. Bruce Lee had not defeated Conroy's body. He had defeated Conroy's assumptions. The assumption that Bruce would retreat. The assumption that the grab would find purchase. The assumption that a man who weighed 140 pounds could not displace a man who weighed 340, because displacement is a function of leverage and timing, not of mass. Bruce had used all 340 pounds of Conroy against Conroy. He had simply redirected the direction it was already traveling. What no one talks about. There's a detail from that evening that rarely appears in any retelling. After the bow, after the brief exchange of words, one of the men in the audience, a former college wrestler named Harrington, asked Bruce a question that had been building in him since the moment Conroy hit the floor. Were you afraid? Bruce looked at him for a moment. Of what? Of him. Of the size. The size is information, Bruce said. Information is not frightening. It tells you where the structure is, where it commits, where it cannot change direction quickly enough. Fear is refusing to read the information. I don't refuse. Harrington thought about this. So there was no moment where you thought you might lose? Bruce picked his paper cup back up from the bench. The water was still in it. He hadn't drunk much of it. There was a moment, he said, when I understood the fight was already won. It was before we started, because he wanted to use his size. And I wanted to use his size. We both wanted the same thing. We just had different ideas about who would be controlling it. He finished the water, set the cup down, rolled his sleeves back up. The man who weighs 200 pounds more than me is not my enemy, Bruce said quietly. He is my curriculum. 42 witnesses, 11 seconds, a man of 340 pounds on the floor, learning something at gymnasium and 12 years of judo had never taught him. Not that he was weak. He was never weak. That strength is a door that opens from both sides, and the man who understands that truth does not need to be the larger one standing at the threshold. He only needs to know which way the door swings.